Imagine a situation in which the smartphone is no longer the main device in your life. You don't take it out every 5 minutes, you don't constantly look at the screen, and you don't depend on notifications, yet you remain fully connected to the digital world. This is exactly the kind of future that Apple is moving toward today, and it could become one of the biggest technological shifts of the past decade. Right now, Apple is actively working on a new category of devices united by one idea: to remove the screen from the center of interaction and replace it with artificial intelligence. This is not just a concept, but a full-fledged strategy. The company understands that smartphones have reached their development ceiling, and further improvements no longer deliver the same effect as before. That is why Apple is searching for a new form factor that can become the next step after the iPhone. According to available information, Apple is developing several devices at once. Some of them we have already discussed earlier, and not all of them will make it to release, because the company traditionally tests many ideas, selecting only those that perfectly fit its philosophy. But among all these developments, there is one particularly interesting candidate: a compact AI keychain with a built-in next-generation Siri system. At first glance, this device looks extremely simple: a small body, neat rounded edges, a minimalist display, and a signature lighting system that softly responds to user actions. But behind this simplicity lies Apple's key idea: to remove everything unnecessary and leave only the essence. This device does not try to replace the smartphone through a screen, it does so through intelligence. The main difference of this gadget is that it does not require constant visual interaction. You are not supposed to look at it, you simply use it as an extension of yourself. Voice, context, habits, all of this becomes part of the interface. Siri in this device is no longer just a voice assistant, but a full-fledged system that understands you on a much deeper level. Apple will most likely integrate a new generation of its AI chips here, which will process most tasks directly on the device. This means instant response, high privacy, and independence from the internet in basic scenarios. Such an approach could become a key advantage for Apple compared to competitors that rely on cloud computing. Speaking about possible specifications, the device may feature several directional microphones with advanced noise cancellation to accurately recognize voice even in noisy environments. It is also reasonable to expect a compact speaker capable of delivering clear and directed sound, possibly even using bone conduction technology for more private interaction. In addition, the device will almost certainly be equipped with an ultra-wideband chip, which will allow it to precisely determine its position in space and interact with other devices. This opens up a huge number of scenarios, such as automatic smart home control, interaction with a car, finding lost items, and much more. Battery life also deserves special attention. Apple understands that such a device must work for a long time, so we can expect the use of highly efficient components and an optimized power consumption system, which will allow the device to operate for several days without recharging despite constant activity. Now let's talk about the most interesting part: how this device could change everyday life. Imagine that you leave your home without a phone. You do not feel that you have forgotten something. All the main functions remain with you. You can send messages, get information, control devices, and receive prompts in real time. At the same time, interaction becomes as natural as possible. You do not open applications, you do not switch between screens, and you do not search for the necessary function. You simply formulate a task, and the system executes it for you. This is a fundamentally different level of interaction, closer to human communication than to the traditional use of technology. However, Apple is not the only company moving in this direction. Samsung is also actively developing AI in its devices and experimenting with new form factors. OpenAI, according to rumors, is working on its own physical device built around artificial intelligence. This means that in the coming years, we will see serious competition in a new category. Nevertheless, Apple has one huge advantage: its ecosystem. The company already controls millions of devices, and a new gadget can easily integrate into this system, strengthening it and creating additional value for the user. This may become the decisive factor in the battle for the market. It is important to understand that Apple will not abruptly abandon smartphones. Most likely, we will see a gradual transition. At first, such devices will complement the iPhone, then take on more and more functions, and at some point may fully replace it for some users. Speaking about timing, there is a possibility that Apple could present the first devices from this lineup in the near future, possibly by the end of the year. But even if that happens, it will only be the beginning. The real revolution will take several years, and if even 70% of this vision is realized, we may witness the emergence of a new era in technology where devices become smaller, smarter, and more invisible, and the main focus shifts from the gadget itself to the intelligence behind it. This is what the entire tech world appears to be watching right now. But there is another important aspect that almost no one talks about, and it may become the key factor in the success or failure of such devices. It is user trust in artificial intelligence. Because the smarter the device becomes, the more data it processes, the deeper it understands a person, and the more the question arises: how comfortable it is for a user to live alongside such an all-seeing assistant. Apple has traditionally emphasized privacy, and in the case of such an AI keychain, this becomes not just an advantage, but a necessity. Most likely, the company will strongly promote the idea of on-device data processing, where most of the information remains on the device and is not sent to the cloud. This could become a major differentiator from competitors' solutions, and at the same time, a powerful marketing tool. In addition, such a device opens up an entirely new market for accessories and integrations. Imagine that this keychain becomes the control center not only for digital services, but also for the physical world around you. Smart doors, cars, security systems, household appliances, all of this could be connected to one small device that is always with you. It is also possible that Apple will introduce personalization at a completely new level. The device may adapt to the user's character, habits, communication style, and even emotional state. Over time, it will become more and more tailored to you, more precise and predictable, creating the feeling not just of a gadget, but of a true digital companion. Looking further ahead, it becomes clear that such devices are only the first step. In the future, they may evolve into wearable solutions integrated directly into clothing or even into the human body. What once seemed like science fiction now looks like a logical continuation of current trends. That is why today's AI keychain is not just an experiment by Apple, but a potential starting point of a new technological era. An era in which devices disappear from view but become closer to humans than ever before. And at this point, everything will be decided not by power or design, but by how seamlessly and organically the technology can integrate into everyday life without creating a feeling of control or dependency. If Apple manages to achieve this balance, we will, for the first time, get a device that does not demand attention, yet constantly enhances the human being. And only then will it become clear: the era of screens is truly approaching its logical end. Not long ago, it seemed that one of the most ambitious projects in the history of Apple had been permanently shut down. A project that was supposed to revolutionize the automotive industry in the same way the iPhone once transformed the smartphone market. Project Titan, better known as the Apple Car. It remained a mystery for a long time, then became the main hope of tech enthusiasts, and then suddenly disappeared. It seemed that the company had simply given up. But today, the situation is beginning to change. Against the backdrop of the rapid development of artificial intelligence, the global technology race, and increasing pressure on the smartphone market, new signals are emerging. Apple appears to be returning to the idea of its own car, and doing so not as an experiment, but as a strategic move for the future. According to insiders, the company has already begun actively hiring engineers connected to the automotive industry. These include specialists in autonomous driving, battery technologies, safety systems, and even aerodynamics. This does not look like a small research project. It looks like preparation for something big. And if this is true, we may be witnessing one of the most significant comebacks in the history of technology. Why now? The answer is both simple and potentially dangerous for Apple. The smartphone market is gradually reaching a plateau. Innovations are becoming more incremental rather than revolutionary. At the same time, a new threat is appearing on the horizon: AI devices. Companies like OpenAI and Google are already working on new device formats that could partially replace smartphones. These could be wearables, next-generation smart assistants, or entirely new categories of gadgets. And if this happens, Apple risks falling into a trap. A company that currently earns billions from the iPhone could face a situation where its main product begins to lose relevance. And Apple understands this perfectly. That is why it is doing what it has always done in critical moments. It is beginning diversification. And the car is not just a new product. It is potentially a new center of its ecosystem. Now imagine what a next-generation Apple car could be like. Previously, Apple tried to create a conventional car, competing directly with Tesla. But now the approach could be completely different. Apple does not create just another product. It creates a new category. In its vision, the car could become not just a means of transportation, but a full-fledged digital space. The design would most likely be extremely minimalist. Clean lines, no unnecessary details, possibly even the absence of a traditional grille. The car could look like a smooth monolith, almost like an iPhone on wheels. But the most interesting part would be inside. The interior could completely redefine the concept of a car. Minimal physical buttons, massive displays, or even the absence of traditional screens. Control through voice, gestures, and AI. You sit in the car, and it already knows where you need to go. It adjusts lighting, temperature, and music to your state. It analyzes your schedule, traffic, and even the weather. This is no longer just a car. It is a personal assistant on wheels. And here, artificial intelligence plays the key role. Apple is actively developing its AI technologies, and if they are integrated into the car, this could become its main advantage. Modern autonomous driving systems operate on predefined algorithms, but a new generation of AI could function differently. The car begins to understand context. It predicts the behavior of other drivers. It adapts to complex situations. It learns. In fact, this is no longer just an autopilot. It is a digital driver. Now let's talk about hardware. Apple is known for its ability to create powerful and energy-efficient chips. And if it transfers this expertise into the automotive space, we could see an entirely new level of performance. Imagine Apple Silicon adapted for a vehicle. Massive computing power, real-time data processing, minimal latency. The car turns into a supercomputer on wheels. Batteries could also become a key element. Apple may bet on new technologies, more energy-dense and safer batteries, with fast charging and longer range. And if they manage to optimize the system the same way they do in their devices, it could provide a significant advantage. But let's be honest, the market is no longer empty. Tesla remains the leader, with vast experience, infrastructure, and millions of cars on the road. Chinese companies like BYD are developing at an incredible pace, offering more affordable solutions and rapidly capturing the market. Google, through Waymo, is actively advancing autonomous technologies. Against this backdrop, Apple will not just need to enter the market, it will need to change it, because simply another electric vehicle is not enough. And here an interesting hypothesis emerges. Apple may not even start with a full-fledged car. It could first create a platform, an operating system, an AI core for vehicles. Imagine different manufacturers starting to use an Apple system, including interfaces, AI, and ecosystem integration. And only after that does Apple release its own car, already having experience and data. That would be very much in the company's style. But there is an even deeper point. The car could become the new iPhone, not literally, but conceptually, the center of the entire ecosystem. You leave your home, and your car is already synchronized with your devices. You continue work, calls, and entertainment while on the road. With the emergence of devices like Apple Vision Pro, this becomes even more interesting. The car turns into a mobile living space. And here it becomes clear why Apple might return to this project right now, because the technology has finally caught up with the idea. Before, it was too complex, too expensive, too early. Today, it looks like a logical next step. And if Apple is really preparing for this, if the company is already assembling teams, testing technologies, and building a strategy, then we are at the beginning of a very interesting phase, because Apple rarely returns to failed projects. But if it does, It means it has a plan. And if that plan works, the Apple Car may become not just a car, but the very device that changes the industry once again. And the question now is not whether it will be released, but how profoundly it will change our world. But there is another scenario that almost no one is talking about, and it may turn out to be the most important. What if Apple is betting not just on a car, but on a completely new model of transportation ownership? Today, most people buy a car. It is expensive. It requires maintenance, insurance, and time. But in the future, this could change. Apple could launch its own network of autonomous vehicles, not just a product, but a service. You do not buy an Apple Car. You summon it the same way you call a taxi today. But this is not a regular taxi. It is a fully autonomous vehicle, perfectly synchronized with your ecosystem. It arrives without a driver. It already knows where you need to go. Inside, there is your profile, your music, your settings. You step in, and it feels like your personal car. And when the ride ends, it leaves for the next user. This could completely transform the market. And if Apple moves in this direction, it will compete not only with Tesla or BYD, but also with Uber and entire urban transportation systems. And perhaps this is why Apple has stayed silent for so long, because it did not want to release a raw product. It was waiting for the moment when it could create something truly new. And if that moment has arrived, then we may soon witness one of the most unexpected and large-scale launches in recent years. In recent months, a growing sense has been forming within the tech community that we are on the verge of one of the most unexpected turns in the history of the world's largest company, Apple. A company that for decades has been associated exclusively with personal devices, smartphones, laptops, watches, and the ecosystem around them, now appears to be gradually shifting its strategic direction. And while Apple once cautiously experimented with new categories, the growing number of leaks, insider reports, and indirect signals now point to something far more radical, an entry into an entirely new class of products that could define the future of the entire industry. More and more analysts, insiders, and supply chain sources are pointing to the same conclusion. Apple is actively investing in the development of a humanoid robot, and this no longer looks like an experiment or a research project. It looks like the beginning of a new era for the company itself. This raises the key question: why now? And is Apple entering this race too late? Because if you look at the market, it becomes clear that the biggest technology players have long since begun competing for leadership in robotics. Tesla, with its Optimus project, Amazon with its warehouse robots and home automation experiments, and Google with its investments in AI and robotics startups, all of them have already taken their first steps. Moreover, some are already demonstrating working prototypes capable of performing real tasks. Against this backdrop, Apple, known for not rushing and instead entering markets only when it can redefine the rules, finds itself in a very interesting position. On one hand, it has enormous resources, unmatched experience in building seamless user interfaces, and a unique ability to integrate technologies into a cohesive whole. On the other hand, it genuinely risks being late if the pace of robotics development exceeds expectations. However, if you look closely at Apple's strategy over recent years, it becomes clear that the company has been gradually preparing for this move. The cancellation of its long-rumored car project, which was once considered Apple's next big product, may not have been a failure, but rather a strategic pivot. Perhaps the company realized that the future is not in autonomous cars as such, but in autonomous systems capable of operating in any environment. And a humanoid robot could be exactly that kind of device. Imagine a product that combines everything Apple does best: refined design, deep ecosystem integration, intuitive interaction, powerful artificial intelligence, and most importantly, the ability to engage with humans on an entirely new level. This is not just a robot vacuum or a smart speaker. It is a full-fledged digital assistant in a physical body. According to reports, Apple's robot concept is fundamentally different from what competitors are building. While Tesla is focusing on a universal worker capable of handling industrial and logistics tasks, Apple, according to sources, is concentrating on home use. This would be a robot designed to become part of everyday life, something like the next generation of the iPhone, but in the physical world. It would help around the house, interact with the user, and possibly even serve as a companion. And here, Apple is not betting on raw strength or industrial efficiency, but on user experience, on emotion, on the feeling that this device truly lives alongside you. But this is where we reach the most difficult part, because building the physical body of a robot is only half the challenge. The real problem is intelligence, and this is where Apple faces clear difficulties. Siri, despite years of development, still lags behind competitors in artificial intelligence. In an era where models like ChatGPT, Gemini, and others demonstrate levels of understanding and interaction that seemed like science fiction just a few years ago, Apple finds itself in the position of a follower. And if the company truly plans to create a humanoid robot, it will have to solve this problem, either by dramatically accelerating the development of its own AI or by partnering with other players. And that could become the most unexpected twist. Because imagine Apple integrating third-party technology into its product, something that contradicts its entire philosophy of controlling every aspect of its devices. Yet, in a new reality where the speed of technological progress is decisive, the company may have to rethink this approach. And if that happens, it will signal that even Apple is forced to adapt to new conditions. Nevertheless, if Apple succeeds in executing its project, it could transform the entire industry. Because Apple has always excelled at one thing, turning complex technologies into mass-market products. The iPhone was not the first smartphone, but it was the first one that millions truly wanted. And if Apple can do the same with robots, we may witness the moment when humanoid robots stop being something confined to laboratories and become part of everyday life. Now let us try to imagine what such a robot might look like. Judging by Apple's approach, it is unlikely to resemble a classic humanoid with a hyper-realistic appearance. Most likely, it will feature a minimalist, perhaps even slightly abstract design, with white and aluminum surfaces, smooth lines, and no unnecessary details, something instantly recognizable as an Apple product. Its movements will be as smooth as possible, almost organic, without sharp mechanical gestures. Its voice will be natural and calm, adaptable to the user. Its face or display may be dynamic, capable of expressing emotions. But the most important aspect is interaction. This robot must understand context, anticipate actions, and act not just as a tool, but as an assistant. It could control the home, cook, help with shopping, monitor health, remind about tasks, and communicate, essentially becoming the physical embodiment of the entire Apple ecosystem. But again, the question arises, will Apple be able to deliver this at the level users expect? Because the bar for the company is extremely high, and if the product is not perfect, it may fail to achieve the impact Apple is aiming for. On the other hand, if it succeeds, this could become the company's most important product in decades, possibly even more important than the iPhone. Because this is not just about a new device, but about a new category, a new form of interaction between humans and technology. And that is why everyone is watching this project right now. Investors, competitors, analysts. Because if Apple truly enters this race, it will change the rules of the game. And then the question will no longer be whether it was early or late, but whether it can once again do what it has done before, arrive later than everyone else and still become the leader. And perhaps we are witnessing the very beginning of that process. And if we look a bit further ahead, beyond the first versions of such a device, it becomes clear that this may not be just a product, but an entire platform around which a new ecosystem could form over time, similar to what happened with the iPhone and the App Store. Because imagine if developers gain access to the robot's body, its cameras, sensors, manipulators, and voice. This would open an entirely new level of applications, where software can not only display information, but physically interact with the real world, helping people with real tasks, from simple daily activities to complex scenarios in education, medicine, or even sports. And in that moment, the robot would stop being just a device made by Apple and become a new digital environment where the products of the future are created. And if the company truly follows this path, we may see the emergence of an entirely new market within a few years, where competition will no longer be about smartphones and laptops, but about intelligent assistants in the physical world. And in this race, the winner will not be the one who builds the first robot, but the one who makes it truly useful, intuitive, and desirable for millions of people. And this is where Apple, despite all the doubts and risks, still holds one of its strongest advantages: the ability to turn technology into something users cannot imagine living without. Right now, the technology market is beginning to experience something many have been waiting for over the past few years, but almost no one believed it would happen exactly like this. Apple, a company that always enters new categories later than others, is by all indications preparing one of the most ambitious products of the past decade: a foldable iPhone, internally referred to as iPhone Fold. And while foldable smartphones were previously seen as a niche experiment, in Apple's case, this is no longer just another form factor, but a potential shift of the entire industry to a new level. It is important to understand the context. In recent years, the smartphone market has effectively stopped surprising users. Improvements exist, cameras are getting better, processors faster, but users are not getting a fundamentally new experience. And it is precisely at such moments that Apple usually makes its move, not because it is first, but because it waits until the technology matures to a point where it can be perfected. And judging by the leaks, the foldable iPhone is exactly such a case. According to insiders and supply chain analysts, Apple has been testing various foldable device concepts for several years, and this is not about a single prototype, but multiple directions at once. One of them is the classic book-style format, like Samsung's Galaxy Fold, where the device unfolds into a small tablet. But unlike competitors, Apple is not satisfied with the current quality of such devices, and the main problem here is the crease on the display. This is not just a visual defect, it is something that breaks the premium feel, and Apple, according to rumors, is almost obsessed with eliminating it completely. The company is currently testing new types of displays with redesigned layer structures, more durable ultra-thin glass, and a fundamentally different hinge mechanism that distributes stress in a way that makes the bend as smooth and unnoticeable as possible. Inside the company, this effect is referred to as an almost invisible fold, and if they truly manage to perfect it, this could become the moment when foldable smartphones stop being a compromise. But the most interesting part of this device is not even the design. The real transformation begins at the level of interaction, and here, artificial intelligence plays a key role. Apple does not just want to add AI to the iPhone Fold, it is building an entirely new interface model around it, where the system itself understands the context of device usage and adapts to the user in real time. Imagine that in its folded state, it is a maximally fast, compact interface where you only have key functions, notifications, calls, quick access to apps. But as soon as you unfold the device, it turns into a completely different type of system. A new level of multitasking appears, split workspaces, dynamic panels that change depending on what you are doing, and most importantly, AI begins to actively participate in this process. You open the device, and the system already understands what you want to do. If you are working, it suggests relevant documents, conversations, notes. If you are on the move, it shows routes, messages, quick actions. If you are consuming content, it automatically reconfigures the interface accordingly. And all of this happens without the need to manually switch between modes. It is also important to note that Apple is focusing not on cloud-based AI, but on local processing. This means that a significant part of the functionality will work directly on the device thanks to a new generation of neural chips. This provides several advantages at once: speed, no latency, and which is critical for Apple, privacy. Unlike many Android solutions where AI is heavily dependent on the cloud, Apple wants the device itself to be the center of intelligence. And this is exactly what creates serious pressure on the market. Because if the iPhone Fold truly becomes a full-fledged AI companion, It could sharply reduce interest in separate AI devices that various companies, including OpenAI, are currently working on. Apple is essentially bringing everything together in one product that is already part of the user's life, and this gives it a huge advantage. At the same time, the impact on competitors will not only be in the field of AI, but also in the overall perception of devices. Samsung has been developing foldable smartphones for several years, but if Apple offers a higher quality, more refined, and more deeply integrated version, this could shift the balance of power. Because users are willing to wait, but when Apple enters, it often sets the standard. As for timing, most leaks currently point to the 2026 to 2027 period. And this makes sense, because Apple will not rush. For the company, this is not just a new product, it is potentially a new category. And if the device is released, it must not be just another foldable smartphone, but the device after which all others will look outdated. The price, according to preliminary data, will be high, in the range of $1,800 to $2,500, which makes it a product not for everyone, but rather a demonstration of capabilities. But this is exactly how Apple often launches new directions. First, the premium segment, then gradual expansion of technologies into more accessible devices. And if you look at the company's strategy, it becomes clear that the iPhone Fold is not just an experiment. It is part of a broader transformation. Apple is gradually moving away from the idea of the smartphone as the main device and shifting toward an ecosystem where devices become more flexible, more contextual, and more deeply tied to artificial intelligence. In this sense, the foldable iPhone is a transitional stage. It combines the familiar format with new interaction. It provides more space for the interface while remaining portable. And most importantly, it creates the foundation for future devices where the screen will no longer play a key role. Because if you look further ahead, it becomes obvious that Apple is moving toward a world where interaction with technology becomes less dependent on displays. And in this scenario, the iPhone Fold is not the final point, but a step toward the next generation of devices. That is why there is so much attention around it. This is not just a new iPhone, it is an attempt to redefine the category itself. And if Apple truly implements everything that insiders are currently talking about, this could become the moment when the market starts to change again. Because in technology, the winner is not the one who does it first, but the one who does it in such a way that after them, no one wants it any other way. And here another important point emerges, one that is rarely discussed, but may turn out to be key in this entire story. Because the iPhone Fold is not only about the screen and not only about AI, it is about changing user behavior. Today, we are used to using smartphones in a very fragmented way. Open, check, close, quick actions, short sessions, constant switching of attention. But the foldable format, especially combined with artificial intelligence, gradually changes this pattern. When you have a device in your pocket that can turn into a full-fledged workspace at any moment, you begin to use it differently, longer, deeper, more consciously. It is no longer just checking notifications, it is the ability to immediately immerse yourself in a task without switching to other devices. And Apple, according to leaks, is placing a big bet on this. Because the more time a user spends within the ecosystem, the stronger that ecosystem becomes. And in this sense, the iPhone Fold is not just a gadget, it is a tool for retaining attention on a new level. Moreover, this could even change the app market. Developers will have to rethink their interfaces, adapt them to flexible screens, multitasking, and contextual AI. And this will trigger a new wave of software development, similar to what happened after the release of the first iPhone. And if all of this comes together into a single picture, we will get not just a new type of device, but a new entry point into digital reality, where the smartphone stops being just a screen in your hand and becomes a dynamic system that adapts to you rather than the other way around. Apple has always known how to wait, how to observe, and almost always how to enter a new technological race not first, but in such a way that it ultimately reshapes it completely. That was the case with smartphones, tablets, and smartwatches. And now, it seems, we are witnessing the beginning of a new stage. possibly the most important in the last 20 years. Apple is preparing to enter the race for next-generation devices that could potentially replace traditional smartphones entirely. This is not just about gadgets, it is about a new way for humans to interact with technology. According to available information, the company is already actively testing several form factors for such devices, one of which looks especially interesting: a compact intelligent bracelet with an integrated next-generation Siri system. This bracelet is not just an accessory, it is an attempt to rethink the very concept of a personal device. Imagine a device that is always with you, does not require a screen, does not require constant interaction with your hands, yet is capable of performing almost all the functions of a smartphone, from communication and information search to controlling your home, health, and even finances. This is exactly what Apple is reportedly betting on, and the key element here is a new version of Siri undergoing the most large-scale transformation in its entire history. If previously Siri was more of an assistant, Apple now aims to turn it into a full-fledged intelligence that understands context, anticipates user actions, and can carry on conversations at a level as close as possible to human interaction. This is no longer just a voice assistant, it is a personal AI companion, and it is around this concept that the new device is being built. According to preliminary leaks, the bracelet's design will be as minimalist as possible, staying true to Apple's philosophy: a thin body, premium materials, possibly a combination of titanium and soft silicone that perfectly adapts to the wrist, without a traditional display or with an extremely minimal interface. The primary interaction will be through voice, gestures, and possibly even micro-movements of the hand muscles, meaning you simply think about an action or slightly move your fingers, and the device understands what you want to do. Inside such a bracelet, there will most likely be a new energy-efficient chip designed specifically for AI tasks, something like a simplified version of the M or A series chips, but focused on local data processing. This is critically important as Apple is betting on privacy, meaning most computations will happen directly on the device without sending data to the cloud, so your requests, habits, and conversations remain with you. The bracelet will continuously analyze your day. It will know when you woke up, how long and how well you slept, your physical activity, changes in your heart rate, stress levels, and even subtle fluctuations in body temperature. This is no longer just a fitness tracker. It is a full real-time health monitoring system, and based on this data, Siri will be able to give recommendations. For example, suggesting a break if stress levels rise, reminding you to drink water, or even warning about potential health issues. But the most interesting part begins when we talk about interaction with other devices. This bracelet will become the center of Apple's entire ecosystem, automatically connecting to devices like Mac, iPad, Apple Vision Pro, and even a car. You walk into a room, and devices already know you are there. They adapt to you, you start speaking, and the system continues the conversation from where you left off. This is a seamless experience that no other company currently offers. And this brings us to the most important point: competition, because Apple is not alone in this race. Samsung is already actively developing its own AI devices, and its future gadgets, according to rumors, will include new types of wearables integrated with Galaxy AI. They are betting on flexibility, on integration with the Android ecosystem, and on a more open approach to development. Their devices may appear earlier, but the question is whether they will be as well thought out. On the other hand, there is OpenAI, a company that could completely change the rules of the game. According to rumors, it is working on its own physical device built around ChatGPT. And while Apple is betting on ecosystem, OpenAI is betting on intelligence. Its device may be physically minimal, but extremely powerful in terms of AI, creating a very interesting confrontation. Apple versus OpenAI is no longer just a competition of devices, it is a competition of philosophies. Apple aims to create a perfect, closed, secure, and deeply integrated product, while OpenAI aims to create a universal intelligence available in any form, and Samsung is trying to combine the best of both worlds. In this struggle, devices like an intelligent bracelet may become key. According to insiders, Apple is considering launching an entire lineup of such devices by the end of the year, or within the next 1 to 2 years. These could take different forms: a bracelet, a pendant, a compact desktop device, or even next-generation glasses. The company is testing various usage scenarios and searching for the ideal form, because a mistake here could be very costly. Apple does not want to repeat the fate of other companies that released raw AI gadgets that failed to achieve mass adoption. It wants to create a device that becomes a new standard, like the iPhone once did. And if this bracelet really launches, it could change a lot. We may stop taking our phones out of our pockets, we may stop looking at screens every few minutes, and technology may become more invisible while at the same time more powerful, present, but not distracting. And this may be the most important change, because today, the main problem with technology is overload. Too many notifications, too much information, and too many screens. Apple wants to change that, to make technology more natural and more human. But will it succeed? That is a big question because the market is already overheated. Users have become more demanding, and competitors are not standing still. One thing is certain: in the coming years, we are in for a very interesting race, one that will determine how we interact with technology in the future, and perhaps devices like this bracelet with next-generation Siri will become the first step into a world where smartphones are already the past. And the most interesting part is that Apple may already be preparing not just a device, but an entirely new habit for people. Because if this bracelet truly becomes the center of interaction with technology, even the way we think about gadgets will change. We will no longer need a screen in front of our eyes every second. We will not need to constantly check notifications, and all information will arrive at the right moment, in the right form, and without overload. Siri will be able to filter out everything unnecessary and leave only what really matters. Imagine walking down the street while the bracelet quietly tells you only what is truly important, without noise, without spam, and without constant distraction. This is no longer just a device. It is a personal reality filter that makes your life simpler, faster, and calmer. And if Apple truly perfects this concept, it could become not just a new product, but the biggest shift in the industry since the arrival of the iPhone. And it is exactly at this point that everything will be decided, whether this becomes a true revolution or just another attempt that never moves beyond concepts. Because today, it is no longer enough to simply impress. It is necessary to change the behavior of millions of people. And if Apple succeeds, then in a few years, we will remember smartphones the same way we now remember button phones, as an important stage, but already a past era. Imagine the near future in which the familiar smartphone is no longer the center of digital life. And this is no longer science fiction, but a direction in which giants like Apple, Samsung, and OpenAI are simultaneously moving. The rapid development of artificial intelligence is literally breaking the foundation of the entire gadget industry. If earlier each new generation of devices meant simply a faster processor, a better camera, or a brighter screen, now we are at a point where the very concept of human interaction with technology is changing. AI stops being just a function inside a device and becomes the core of the entire system. And this means that the device as a physical object is gradually losing its key role. Today, the smartphone is the control center for everything: communication, work, entertainment, and finances. But if you think about it, it is already starting to become a limitation. A small screen, the need to take the device out, open apps, press buttons. All of this looks like an intermediate stage, and companies understand this perfectly. That is why there is now a hidden but very intense race for the next form of device that will replace the smartphone. And here emerges one of the most discussed ideas of recent years: next-generation AI devices that may not even have a traditional screen. Already now, devices are being developed that work through voice, gestures, context, and constant understanding of the user. Such devices do not require you to open anything. They understand what you need on their own. Interestingly, one of Apple's engineers directly stated that the company realizes that the future is not in smartphones in their familiar form, but in new form factors where AI will be deeply integrated, and this aligns with what we see in the market. Samsung is actively experimenting with wearable devices and smart accessories, while OpenAI, according to rumors, is working on its own physical device where the main focus is not hardware, but intelligence. But the most interesting direction right now is AI clothing. At first glance, it sounds strange, clothing that becomes a device. But if you look deeper, it is a logical evolution. Clothing is something that is always with you. It does not need to be taken out. It does not require separate handling in your hands. It does not take up space. It is already part of you. Imagine a t-shirt, jacket, or hoodie with ultra-thin sensors, microprojectors, and computing modules built in. An interface can appear on the surface of the fabric, not like a smartphone screen, but as a projection directly onto the clothing. You look down and see notifications, messages, a map, and AI suggestions. You touch the fabric and interact with the system. But the key here is not even the projection. The main thing is the AI that constantly analyzes context. It understands where you are, what you are doing, and who you are talking to. It can assist you in real time, translate speech, give advice, and help make decisions. For example, you are walking through the city, and your clothing displays navigation directly on your sleeve. You enter a store, and the system shows prices, reviews, and product comparisons. You talk to someone in another language, and AI instantly translates and displays text right in front of you. And this is only the basic level. In a more advanced version, clothing becomes an interface between you and the digital world. It can function like augmented reality without glasses, project information into space, and adapt to you by changing the interface, display style, and even the level of information depending on the situation. Of course, the main question arises: how convenient is it? Because any technology fails if it is inconvenient to use. And here there are several key challenges. The first is power. How to ensure these systems work without huge batteries. Already, flexible batteries and technologies that can charge from body movement or sunlight are being developed. The second is comfort. Clothing must remain clothing. It cannot be heavy, rigid, or uncomfortable. This means that all electronics must be as miniaturized as possible and integrated in such a way that the user does not even feel them. The third factor is privacy. If a device constantly analyzes everything around it, the question arises: where is the data stored and who has access to it? And this will be one of the main topics in the coming years. But despite all the challenges, the potential of this technology is enormous because it solves the main problem of modern gadgets: the gap between humans and technology. Right now, we are constantly switching the real world, the screen, and back to the real world. But in the future, this switching may disappear. AI-powered clothing can make interaction with technology completely natural, without screens, without apps, without unnecessary actions, just you and a system that understands you. And if this is truly realized, it will not just be a new gadget, it will be a new stage in the evolution of technology, as significant as the transition from button phones to smartphones. And the most interesting part is that we are already at the beginning of this transition. Companies like Apple, Samsung, and OpenAI are investing billions. Engineers are testing prototypes. And the question is no longer whether this will appear, but who will do it first and who will make it truly convenient. Because convenience will decide everything, and whoever manages to combine powerful AI, invisible integration, and real comfort will effectively define the future of the entire industry for years to come. And if we go further, it becomes even more interesting, because AI clothing is not just an interface or convenience, it is potentially a new platform on which an entire ecosystem of services will be built. Imagine that just as there are apps on smartphones today, there will be layers or modes for clothing. For example, a sports mode, and your clothing begins to track movements with maximum precision, analyze running technique, breathing, and workload, and provide recommendations in real time. For you as a sprinter, this could become a game changer because you get a real-time coach that sees everything, from body position to push-off force. Then comes work mode. You enter the office, and the clothing automatically switches. Minimal notifications, focus on tasks, quick access to information. Need to find something? You just speak, and the system displays a concise summary right in front of you. No tabs, no searching, everything happens instantly. Or, for example, a social mode. You are at a meeting or event, and AI helps you navigate. It suggests people's names, reminds you what you talked about before, and provides context. This is no longer just convenient, it changes the very format of human communication. It is also important to mention integration with the surrounding world, because such devices will not exist on their own. They will become part of a smart environment. You walk into your home, and everything adapts to you. Lighting, temperature, music, information, all synchronized. And you do not even think about it because the system has already done everything. And here we come to the most important point. In the future, the value will not be in the device, but in how deeply it understands the human. That is why companies like Apple, Samsung, and OpenAI are focusing specifically on AI, because hardware eventually becomes similar, but intelligence is what creates real advantage. And if you put it all together, it becomes obvious. We are standing on the threshold of a moment when technology will stop being something external and will become an extension of ourselves. And perhaps in just a few years, taking a phone out of your pocket will feel as strange as using a button phone does today. In recent weeks, leaks have begun to appear in the technology industry that were initially perceived as just another set of rumors. But now more and more analysts and insiders agree that a serious strategic step is indeed being prepared inside Apple, capable of changing the entire lineup of the company's personal devices. According to sources, including Bloomberg and Reuters, Apple is actively working on a new category of devices that will develop in parallel with the classic iPhone lineup, including the future iPhone 18. It is not about replacing the smartphone, but about creating a separate direction that in the future may become the next stage after the iPhone. Inside the company, this project is described as a transition from a device in the hand to a technology that exists around the user. Insiders claim that Apple is increasingly focusing on the idea of an invisible interface. This means that the familiar screen is gradually ceasing to be the center of interaction. Instead, the company is developing solutions where information appears directly in the space in front of the user. According to analysts from TF International Securities, Apple is already testing prototypes of devices that do not have the classic smartphone form factor. They may be significantly thinner, lighter, and visually less noticeable. The main idea is that the user stops perceiving the device as a separate object. At the same time, Apple is not rushing to abandon the iPhone. On the contrary, the iPhone 18 is considered as an intermediate stage that will continue the evolution of the current lineup. But in parallel, the company is preparing something that may completely change the rules of the game in the future. Sources note that inside Apple, the project is supervised at the highest level. This is connected with the fact that the company understands that the smartphone market has reached a stage of saturation. Further growth is possible only through radical innovations, and that is exactly why Apple is looking for ways to go beyond the usual device. One of the key directions is the integration of next-generation artificial intelligence. According to insider information, Apple is developing a system that will be able to adapt the interface in real time. This means that the device will not simply display information, but will shape it for a specific user and current context. At the same time, great attention is paid to interaction without physical contact. Gestures, voice, gaze, all of this becomes the foundation of the new interface. Analysts note that Apple is inspired by the development of spatial computing. After the release of headsets and experiments with augmented reality, the company has begun to actively invest in technologies that allow the interface to be moved beyond the limits of the screen. This direction may become the basis of a new line of devices. According to Bloomberg, Apple is considering the possibility of creating a compact device that will work as a central module, while the entire interface will be projected in the space around the user. This may look like a holographic interface, although in reality, it is about a more complex combination of technologies. It is important to note that Apple traditionally does not rush to bring such products to market. The company prefers to refine the technology to a perfect state. That is why the project may remain in development for several more years. However, the very fact of its existence is already influencing the industry. Competitors are closely watching Apple's actions. If the company really presents a new line of devices, this may trigger a new wave of technological competition. At the same time, Apple is betting not on the wow effect for the sake of marketing, but on deep integration into the user's everyday life. The device must become so convenient and invisible that a person stops thinking about its existence. That is exactly the philosophy of the project. According to insiders inside Apple, the idea is increasingly being voiced that the future of technology is not new devices, but the disappearance of the devices themselves as a separate category. And if this strategy proves successful, then in the coming years, we may witness the beginning of a transition to a new era where the iPhone becomes just one stage in evolution, and in its place appears something far more integrated, invisible, and technologically advanced, fundamentally changing the way humans interact with the digital world. As this information continues to spread among analysts and investors, it is becoming increasingly clear that this is not a one-off experiment, but a long-term strategy. Inside Apple, this project is seen as a foundation for the next decade, and according to sources close to the supply chain, the company has already begun early negotiations with manufacturers of new types of components capable of enabling ultra-thin designs, flexible power elements, and projection systems that can operate under various lighting conditions. At the same time, as noted by journalists at Bloomberg, special attention is being paid to energy efficiency, since one of the main challenges of such devices is maintaining complex visual interfaces without significantly increasing power consumption. It is precisely here that Apple is trying to achieve a breakthrough by leveraging its own developments in chip design and software optimization. In parallel, according to Reuters, the company is actively testing usage scenarios in which the device fully replaces the smartphone in everyday life, including communication, navigation, work, and content consumption. The key objective is to make this transition as seamless as possible so that the user does not feel any loss of functionality, but instead gains a more natural and convenient way of interacting with the digital world. Sources also note that Apple is considering several possible form factors, including compact wearable devices, minimalistic modules, and even solutions that can be integrated into clothing or accessories. This indicates that the company is not limited to a single concept, but is searching for the optimal balance between technology and user experience, which fully aligns with its philosophy. In addition, analysts at TF International Securities emphasize that Apple is actively investing in the development of sensors and motion tracking systems, since interaction without a screen requires high precision in recognizing gestures, gaze, and the user's position in space. These technologies may become critical to the success of the new product line. At the same time, it is important to understand that the company is acting with extreme caution, avoiding premature announcements and leaks, which makes the emerging information especially valuable to the market, as each detail helps clarify the direction of development. If all available data is combined, it becomes clear that Apple is preparing not just to introduce a new product, but to change the very paradigm of how technology is used. Within the industry, a scenario is already being discussed in which the new line of devices will initially coexist alongside the iPhone, gradually expanding its capabilities and audience, and then, as the technology matures, begin to replace traditional smartphones. This process may take several years, but its beginning could be much closer than many expect, especially given the current pace of development in artificial intelligence and spatial interfaces. In this context, Apple's project appears to be a logical continuation of the company's entire evolution, from iPod and iPhone to its modern experiments with augmented reality. If the company succeeds in realizing its vision, in the near future, we may see a world in which devices cease to be physical objects and instead become part of the surrounding space. According to analysts, this is exactly what Apple is striving toward as it prepares to take one of the most important steps in its history.